The telegram clutched in Arabella Zimmerman's gloved hand promised a mansion, servants, and a life of ease in San Francisco, California. But as the stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of a weathered saloon in June of 1875, her stomach twisted with the first whispers of doubt. She stepped down from the coach, her emerald silk dress already coated in a fine layer of dust from the long journey west. The town sprawled before her, nothing like the glittering descriptions in Mr. Theodore Whitmore's letters. San Francisco proper lay miles north, she realized with growing horror. This was barely more than a settlement on the outskirts, a collection of sun-bleached buildings and mud-caked streets. "Miss Zimmerman," a reedy voice called out. Arabella turned to see a portly man in an expensive but ill-fitting suit approaching. His face was flushed, whether from the heat or drink she could not tell. "Mr. Whitmore?" she asked, though her heart already knew the answer would disappoint. "The very same. Welcome to California, my dear." "I trust your journey was pleasant." He reached for her hand, his palm clammy against her fingers. "It was long," she replied carefully, extracting her hand. "Your letters mentioned a home in San Francisco itself." "Ah, yes. Well, technically we are in San Francisco County. The main city is a short ride away. I have business interests there, of course." He gestured vaguely northward. "But I find the quieter life suits me better. Come, let me show you to your new home." The carriage he led her to was fine enough, drawn by two matched grays. Arabella settled onto the velvet seat, trying to ignore the gnawing unease in her chest. She had left Boston with such hopes, fleeing a life of genteel poverty after her father's business collapsed. Theodore Whitmore's letters had painted a picture of wealth and security, everything she desperately needed. They traveled perhaps 2 miles before turning down a rutted lane. The house that appeared was not the mansion she had envisioned. It was large, certainly, but gaudy and new, the paint too bright, the gingerbread trim excessive. It looked like wealth without taste, money without refinement. "Here we are," Theodore announced proudly. "The finest home in the area." Arabella forced a smile. "It is very grand. Only the best for my future wife. Come, let me show you inside." The interior matched the exterior, all flash and little substance. Heavy furniture crowded every room. Gilt frames held mediocre paintings. Crystal chandeliers hung too low. It was a wealthy man's idea of luxury without any true understanding of elegance. "I will give you time to rest and refresh yourself," Theodore said, showing her to a bedroom. "We will dine at 7. I have much to discuss regarding our wedding arrangements." Left alone, Arabella sank onto the overstuffed bed and let herself feel the full weight of her mistake. Theodore was not the man his letters suggested. Those had been eloquent and thoughtful. In person, he was coarse and presumptuous. She suspected he had paid someone to write them for him. But what choice did she have? She had used the last of her money for the journey west. Her mother was dead, her father had drunk himself into an early grave, and her relatives in Boston had made it clear she was no longer welcome. This marriage was her only option. Dinner that evening confirmed her fears. Theodore drank heavily, his conversation growing louder and cruder with each glass of wine. He spoke of his mining interests, his investments, his importance in the territory. He never asked about her thoughts or feelings. She was clearly meant to be another possession, another display of his wealth. "We will marry next week," he announced over dessert. "I have already made arrangements with the minister." "So soon?" Arabella's voice came out smaller than she intended. "No reason to wait. You are here to be my wife, after all." He leaned forward, and she caught the sour smell of alcohol on his breath. "I am not a patient man, Miss Zimmerman." That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Arabella stared at the ceiling and fought back tears. She had traded one prison for another, exchanged poverty for a gilded cage. But she was not married yet. Perhaps if she rode into the main city, found employment of some kind. The thought sustained her through a sleepless night. When morning came, she dressed in her simplest traveling suit and slipped downstairs. Theodore was still abed, sleeping off his excess. She would tell the servants she wished to see the city, to visit shops perhaps, but when she reached the front door, she found it locked. All the doors, she discovered with mounting panic, were locked from the outside. She was a prisoner. "Mr. Whitmore gave orders, miss," the housekeeper explained when Arabella confronted her. "You are not to leave the grounds without him. For your safety, he says. This is intolerable." "I am not a criminal." The woman's face showed sympathy but also resignation. "I am sorry, miss. I only follow orders." Arabella retreated to the gardens, such as they were. Newly planted and unestablished, they offered little comfort. She walked the perimeter of the property, looking for any weakness in the fence, any opportunity for escape. There was none. Theodore had built his mansion like a fortress. 3 days passed in this manner. Theodore left each morning for his business affairs, returning at dinner time to drink and boast. Arabella smiled and nodded and planned. She would find a way out, even if she had to walk to San Francisco proper. Anything was better than this. Her opportunity came on the 4th day. A rider arrived with urgent news of some trouble at one of Theodore's mines. He left in haste, shouting orders to the staff. In the confusion, Arabella saw her chance. She changed into her riding habit, claimed she needed fresh air and exercise, and managed to convince a young, stable hand to saddle a horse for her. "Just around the grounds, miss," he said nervously. "Mr. Whitmore would have my hide if anything happened to you." "Of course," Arabella lied smoothly. "Just a gentle ride." The moment she was mounted and through the gate, she dug her heels into the mare's sides and bolted. She heard shouting behind her but did not look back. The horse, grateful for the exercise, stretched into a gallop. Arabella had grown up riding in Boston's parks. She knew how to handle a spirited mount. She rode north, hoping to reach the main city before Theodore discovered her escape. But she had not accounted for the unfamiliar terrain. What looked like a clear path led into rougher country, hills and scrubland she did not recognize. When she finally stopped to get her bearings, she realized she was utterly lost. The sun was past its zenith, afternoon sliding toward evening. She needed to find civilization before dark. Arabella urged the mare forward, trying to keep the sun at her back, hoping that would lead her in the right direction. The landscape grew wilder. She saw no farms, no houses, no signs of human habitation. Panic began to set in. She had been a fool to run without proper planning, without supplies or knowledge of the area. Pride and desperation had made her reckless. The mare was tiring, her gait becoming uneven. Arabella slowed to a walk, trying to conserve the animal's strength. They needed to find water soon. The California sun was unforgiving, nothing like the gentle warmth of a Boston summer. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Arabella spotted smoke rising in the distance. Where there was smoke, there were people. She turned the mare toward it, hope rekindling in her chest. The source of the smoke was a small ranch, modest and weathered but well-maintained. A corral held several horses. A barn stood beside a simple house. Gardens stretched in neat rows. It was humble, even primitive compared to Theodore's mansion, but something about it felt honest and welcoming. As Arabella approached, a man emerged from the barn. He was tall and lean, dressed in worn denim and a faded shirt. A battered hat shaded his face. He moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Evening," he called out, his voice carrying a note of concern. "You look like you have had a rough ride." Arabella tried to dismount gracefully, but her legs were shaking from exhaustion and fear. She stumbled, and suddenly he was there, steadying her with work-roughened hands. "Easy now," he said gently. "When did you last have water?" "I do not know. This morning, perhaps." Her voice sounded thin and distant to her own ears. "Come on, let us get you inside." He kept one hand on her elbow, guiding her toward the house. With the other he called out, "Jessie, come take this mare. She needs water and a rub-down." A younger man appeared, perhaps 16 or 17, and led the horse away. The tall cowboy ushered Arabella into the house, settling her at a simple wooden table. "My name is Warren Nichols," he said, pumping water into a cup. "This is my ranch. You are safe here." She drank gratefully, the cool water like a benediction. "Arabella Zimmerman." "I apologize for intruding on your hospitality." "No apology needed. Out here, we help folks who need it. That is just the way of things." He studied her with eyes the color of a summer sky. "You are a long way from anywhere, Miss Zimmerman. How did you come to be lost in this country?" The kindness in his voice, the genuine concern, broke something open inside her. The fear and desperation of the past days came pouring out. She told him everything. The mail-order bride arrangement, Theodore's deception, her imprisonment, her desperate escape. Warren listened without interrupting, his face growing progressively grimmer. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Theodore Whitmore," he finally said, his voice hard. "I know of him. He owns several mines, treats his workers poorly. There have been rumors about him, none of them good." "I have nowhere else to go," Arabella admitted, hating the tremor in her voice. "I have no money, no family. I was a fool to run, but I could not stay." "You were not a fool, you were brave." Warren leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow we will figure out what to do, but you do not have to go back to Whitmore. That I promise you." Something in his voice, in his eyes, made her believe him. This stranger with his humble ranch and calloused hands was offering her more genuine kindness than Theodore had with all his wealth. "Thank you," she whispered. "You cannot know what this means to me." "I think I can. Now you must be hungry. Let me fix you some supper." He moved around the kitchen with efficient ease, putting together a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and bacon. It was plain fare, nothing like the elaborate dinners at Theodore's mansion, but it tasted better than anything she had eaten in days. Perhaps because it came with no expectations, no demands. "This ranch," she said between bites. "Have you been here long? Built it myself about 5 years back. I worked as a cowhand, saved every penny, and finally got enough together to buy this land. It is not much, but it is mine." Pride colored his voice, an honest pride very different from Theodore's boasting. "It seems lovely, peaceful. It can be also lonely sometimes, hard work always, but I would not trade it for anything." He paused, seeming to consider his words. "I know it is not fancy, no servants, no luxury. Just a simple life." "I think," Arabella said slowly, "that I have had quite enough of luxury. It rings hollow when there is no heart behind it." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, a spark of understanding. Warren looked away first, clearing his throat. "You should get some rest. You can take my room. I will sleep in the barn." "I could not possibly. I insist. It is not much, but the bed is clean and comfortable." He smiled, and it transformed his face, softening the hard lines carved by sun and work. "Besides, Jessie is already out there. He will think it is an adventure, the two of us bedding down with the horses." Too tired to argue, Arabella let him show her to a small, neat bedroom. The bed was a simple iron frame, the quilt obviously handmade. Everything was clean and spare, no unnecessary ornament. It felt honest, like the man himself. She slept deeply and woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. For a moment she forgot where she was, then memory returned. She was free of Theodore, at least for now. The thought made her smile. Warren was in the kitchen, frying eggs. "Morning," he greeted her. "I hope you like your eggs over easy. I am afraid it is the only way I know how to make them. They smell wonderful." They ate breakfast together, companionable silence filling the spaces between brief exchanges. Arabella learned that Jesse was a young man Warren had taken in after the boy's parents died. He was teaching him the ranching trade, giving him a home and a future. "You did not have to do that," she observed. "Yes, I did. We all need somebody looking out for us. Jesse needed a place. I had one." It is as simple as that. But it was not simple, Arabella thought. It was kindness, pure and uncomplicated. She had known so little of that in her life. After breakfast, Warren said, "I have been thinking about your situation. Whitmore will be looking for you. He strikes me as the type who does not like losing his possessions." "What should I do? I cannot go back, but I have nowhere else to go. You could stay here." The words came out quickly, as if he had to say them before he lost his nerve. "I mean properly. I could use help around the place. Cooking, mending, garden work. I could pay you wages enough to save up and make your own way eventually. You would have your own room, your independence. No strings attached." Arabella stared at him. "You would do that for me, a stranger." "You are not a stranger anymore, and yes, I would." He met her gaze steadily. "I will not lie and say I do not have selfish reasons. It would be nice to have a woman's touch around here, some decent cooking that is not burned or undercooked. But mainly, I think you deserve a chance to figure out what you want without some man forcing your hand." Tears pricked her eyes. "Mr. Nichols, Warren, please." "Warren, I do not know what to say. This is more than I could have hoped for." "Then say yes. Stay and work for me. When you have saved enough money or figured out what you want to do, you can leave. No obligations beyond honest work for honest pay." "Yes," she said, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Yes, I will stay." His smile was like sunrise, warm and genuine. "Good. That is settled then. Let me show you around the place and we can figure out what needs doing." The ranch was small but efficiently run. Warren kept about 20 head of cattle, a few horses, chickens for eggs, and a milk cow. He grew vegetables and had fruit trees just beginning to establish. He explained his plans to expand slowly, building the herd and improving the land. "I know it is not much," he said, almost apologetically. "It is honest work," Arabella replied. "That is worth more than all of Theodore's mining wealth." Over the next few days they fell into a rhythm. Arabella took over the cooking and household chores, tasks she had learned in her youth before her family's brief period of wealth. She mended clothes, tended the garden, and gathered eggs. The work was hard, her hands unused to such labor, but it felt purposeful in a way that her ornamental existence in Boston never had. Warren was unfailingly kind and respectful. He never pressed her for more conversation than she wished to give, never invaded her space. Yet she found herself seeking out his company, drawn by his quiet strength and gentle humor. Jesse warmed to her quickly, starved as he was for maternal attention. She found herself mothering him a bit, making sure he ate properly and did not work himself too hard. He clearly idolized Warren, and she could see why. Warren was teaching him not just ranching, but how to be a good man. A week after her arrival, they had their first visitor. A rider appeared on the horizon, and Warren's face grew serious. "Stay in the house," he told Arabella. "Keep away from the windows." "Who is it?" "One of Whitmore's men, if I am not mistaken. I recognize that horse." Fear clenched her stomach. "He has found me. He might just be passing through. Let me handle this." Warren's hand briefly touched her shoulder, reassuring and warm. You are under my protection now. I will not let anyone take you against your will." She watched from the darkened interior as Warren went to meet the rider. The man was rough-looking, hard-eyed and unshaven. Their conversation was brief, Warren's posture relaxed but ready. Finally, the rider turned his horse and left. Warren came back inside, his expression grim. "He was looking for you. I told him I had not seen any lost women. He did not believe me, but he could not prove otherwise. He will tell Theodore where I am, probably. But Whitmore cannot just come onto my land and take you. You are a free woman. You have not married him, have no legal obligation to him. If he tries anything, he will be the one in trouble with the law. And if he does not care about the law," Warren's jaw tightened, "then he will have to go through me." The simple declaration, spoken without bravado or dramatics, sent warmth flooding through her. When had anyone ever stood for her like this? When had anyone ever offered protection without demanding something in return? "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." Their eyes met and held. Something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings neither was quite ready to name. Theodore came 2 days later, arriving in his fancy carriage with 3 hired men. Arabella was in the garden when she heard the commotion. She ran to the house, her heart pounding. Warren was already outside, Jessie at his side. Both were armed, rifles held casually but ready. It was the first time she had seen Warren look truly dangerous. "Whitmore," Warren greeted him, his voice cool. "You are on my land. I am here for my fiancée." Theodore climbed down from the carriage, his face red with anger. "Miss Zimmerman is promised to me. I want her returned." "Miss Zimmerman is not property to be returned. She is a free woman who left of her own accord. She is confused, turned around by this harsh country. She needs to come home where she belongs." "I belong to no one." Arabella could not stay silent any longer. She stepped onto the porch, her voice shaking but firm. "I am not your fiancé, Mr. Whitmore. I never agreed to marry you. Your letters were lies and you held me prisoner. I left because I chose to, and I will not return." Theodore's face darkened further. "You accepted my offer. You took my money for passage." "I accepted an offer made under false pretenses. You may keep your money. I owe you nothing." "Ungrateful wretch. I was offering you everything. Wealth, position, security. You were offering me a prison. Warren is offering me freedom. There is no comparison." She had not meant to use Warren's first name, had not meant to imply anything beyond a working relationship. But the words were out, and she found she did not regret them. Theodore's eyes narrowed, flicking between her and Warren. "So that is how it is. You have taken up with this dirt farmer, this nobody." "Watch your mouth," Warren said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. "You have said your piece. Now leave. Miss Zimmerman has made her choice clear. She is not thinking straight. I demand, you demand nothing. This is my land and you are trespassing. I suggest you go before I lose my patience." For a moment, the tension was thick enough to cut. Theodore's hired men shifted uneasily, clearly not eager for a fight. Theodore himself seemed to be calculating odds, weighing his pride against the very real threat Warren presented. Finally, he spat in the dirt. "You will regret this, both of you. I am an important man in this territory. I can make life very difficult for you. Threats now. That just proves Miss Zimmerman made the right choice." Warren raised his rifle slightly, not quite pointing it but making his meaning clear. "Leave. Do not come back." Theodore climbed back into his carriage, his face twisted with fury. "This is not over," he snarled before signaling his driver to go. They watched until the carriage disappeared from view. Only then did Warren lower his rifle, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "Are you all right?" he asked Arabella. "I am now." Her hands were shaking with reaction, adrenaline flooding her system. "Do you think he meant his threats?" "Probably. But Whitmore is a bully and bullies back down when confronted. He will bluster and complain, but he knows he has no legal standing. Warren paused. Still, it might be wise to keep an eye out for a while. Make sure he does not try anything foolish. That night, Warren insisted on sleeping in the house, bedding down on the floor in the main room. Jessie did the same, the two of them mounting an informal guard. Arabella lay awake in the bedroom, listening to the sounds of the house settling, the quiet murmur of voices from the other room. She felt safe, protected. More than that, she felt valued. Warren had stood for her without hesitation, risked his own safety for a woman he barely knew. It spoke to a quality of character she had rarely encountered. Over the following weeks, Theodore made no further appearances. They heard through travelers and supply runs that he was complaining loudly about ungrateful women and thieving cowboys, but he took no concrete action. Gradually, Arabella began to relax, to believe she might truly be free of him. In that time, something bloomed between her and Warren. It started small, hands brushing as they worked side by side in the garden, lingering glances across the dinner table, conversations that stretched long into the evening. They talked about everything, their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Warren told her about growing up on a struggling farm in Missouri, how he had come west seeking opportunity. He spoke of the loneliness of those first years, working for other men, saving every penny, dreaming of his own place. "I used to think about having a wife, a family," he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "But I could never seem to find the right woman. The ones who wanted me only saw a ticket to security. They did not see me." "I see you," Arabella said softly. "I see a good man, a kind man, someone who lives by his principles." Warren looked at her, his blue eyes intense. "What do you see when you look at your future, Arabella?" It was the first time he had used her given name, and it sent a shiver through her. "I used to see only survival. Now I see possibility. I see a life I could be proud of, not just one I endure. And could that life be here, with me?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with hope and fear. Arabella's heart raced. She had been trying not to name her feelings, not to hope for too much. But looking at Warren now, at this good, honest man, she could not deny what had grown in her heart. "Yes," she whispered, "if you truly want me, not as a servant or an obligation, but as a partner, as someone you choose freely." "I choose you," Warren said, his voice rough with emotion. "I think I chose you the moment you stumbled off that horse, all pride and fear and determination. You are the strongest woman I have ever met, Arabella. I would be honored if you would consider being my wife." "Not a mail-order bride this time," she said, smiling through sudden tears. "A bride of my own choosing. Always your choice. In everything, always your choice." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, a kiss that promised respect and partnership and love. Arabella felt something inside her unfold, some tight knot of fear and protection finally relaxing. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Not luxury, but love. Not wealth, but worth. They married a month later in the small church that served the scattered ranching community. It was nothing like the elaborate wedding Theodore had planned. Arabella wore a simple dress she had sewn herself, cream-colored calico with lace trim. Warren wore his best shirt and a new vest. Jessie stood as witness, his young face glowing with happiness for them both. The minister, an elderly man named Pastor Green, spoke of partnership and mutual respect, of building a life together through hard work and faith. His words resonated with Arabella in a way that Theodore's grand plans never had. This was real. This was true. After the ceremony, their neighbors threw together a celebration at the ranch. It was simple fare: roasted meat, fresh bread, pies made from dried fruit. But it was given with genuine affection, offered by people who had come to respect Warren and were willing to accept Arabella for his sake. One woman in particular, Martha Daniels from the neighboring ranch, took Arabella aside. "Warren is a good man," she said. "The best. He deserves happiness. I can see he has found it with you." "I hope I can be worthy of him," Arabella replied. Martha smiled. "You already are, dear. You already are." That night, in the small bedroom that was now theirs to share, Warren was gentle and patient with Arabella. He had clearly had experience, but he treated her like something precious, taking his time, ensuring her comfort. They came together slowly, learning each other, building the physical bond to match the emotional one. Afterward, lying in his arms, Arabella felt complete for the first time in her life. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Warren replied, his voice full of wonder. "I never thought I would get to say those words and mean them so completely." Their life together fell into a comfortable rhythm. Arabella continued to manage the household and tend the garden, but now she also worked alongside Warren with the cattle and horses. She learned to ride properly, not just the genteel park riding of her youth, but true ranch work. She learned to rope and brand, to mend fences and move herds. It was hard work, often exhausting, but it was deeply satisfying. She went to bed each night tired but content, knowing she had contributed something real to their life together. Warren, for his part, revealed more layers as they grew closer. He had a wry sense of humor that caught her off guard, a tendency to see the absurdity in difficult situations. He was patient with her mistakes, encouraging as she learned. He valued her opinions, asking her advice on ranch decisions and truly listening to her answers. Their first winter together was harsh, cold winds sweeping down from the mountains. They spent long evenings by the fire, Warren teaching Arabella to play chess with a battered set he had carried from Missouri. She taught him the poems she had memorized as a girl, and they took turns reading aloud from the few books they owned. Jesse thrived under their combined attention, growing taller and more confident. He clearly loved having Arabella there, and she found herself caring for him as she might a younger brother. When he shyly asked if he could call her Aunt Arabella, she had to blink back tears as she agreed. Spring came with new challenges. A late frost killed some of their fruit trees. Several calves were lost to predators. Money was tight, and there were moments when Arabella could see worry etching lines around Warren's eyes. "We will be all right," she assured him one particularly difficult evening. "We have each other and we have this land. That is more than enough." "I want to give you more," Warren said, frustration in his voice. "You deserve pretty dresses and nice things. You should not have to work so hard." Arabella took his face in her hands, making him meet her eyes. "I have everything I need. Do you not see? Theodore offered me luxury without love. You offer me love without luxury. There is no comparison. This life, hard as it sometimes is worth 1,000 empty mansions." He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and they found comfort in each other as they always did. By summer, their financial situation improved. The cattle fetched a good price, and Warren's reputation for honest dealing brought him opportunities to buy and sell horses. They were not wealthy, would likely never be wealthy, but they were stable and building toward something. In August, Arabella realized she was pregnant. The knowledge filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She had seen women die in childbirth, knew the risks. But more than that, she wanted this child with a fierce intensity that surprised her. When she told Warren, he went pale, then red, then swept her into his arms. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are having a baby. Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear it. Happy does not begin to cover it. Terrified, yes, but happier than I have ever been. He pulled back to look at her. You will have the best care. We will bring in a doctor from the city if we need to, whatever it takes to keep you safe." "We will be fine," she said with more confidence than she felt. "Women have babies every day. We will manage this like we manage everything else. Together." Martha Daniels proved invaluable during the pregnancy. She had delivered several babies herself and provided Arabella with advice and reassurance. She also became a true friend, someone Arabella could talk to about things that Warren, for all his good qualities, simply could not understand. The pregnancy was difficult at times. Arabella was sick in the early months, exhausted in the later ones. But Warren was attentive and patient, taking over more of the household work, insisting she rest. Jesse stepped up too, proving himself capable and responsible beyond his years. In March of 1877, with winter snow still on the ground, Arabella went into labor. Martha was there, as was the traveling doctor they had managed to secure. Warren paced outside, Jesse keeping him company. The labor was long and hard, lasting through the night and into the next day. There were moments when Arabella was certain she would not survive, when the pain was so intense she could not imagine it ending. But Martha's calm voice guided her through, and the doctor's skilled hands ensured both she and the baby remained safe. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, a baby's cry split the air. Arabella, exhausted beyond measure, heard the doctor say, "It is a boy, a healthy boy." A son. She and Warren had a son. They brought the baby to her, a small, red-faced creature with a surprisingly loud voice. Arabella held him carefully, marveling at the tiny fingers and toes, the shock of dark hair. Warren was allowed in then, his face showing the strain of his long vigil. He approached the bed slowly, as if afraid to believe it was real. "A boy," Arabella said, smiling despite her exhaustion. "We have a son, Warren." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, reaching out to touch the baby's head with a trembling hand. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Arabella. Thank you for this gift." They named him William after Warren's father, who had died when Warren was young. Little William proved to be a robust baby, healthy and hungry and surprisingly good-natured. He had Warren's blue eyes and Arabella's dark hair, a perfect blend of them both. The next few months were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, but Arabella had never been happier. She loved watching Warren with their son, the big rancher's hands so gentle with the tiny infant. He sang to William in the evenings, old songs from his childhood, his voice soft and slightly off-key. Jesse was smitten with his new nephew, as he called William. He was constantly volunteering to hold him or rock him, pride evident in every gesture. Arabella felt her heart swell watching her makeshift family come together around this new life. As William grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Warren's hard work and honest reputation brought steady income. They were able to make improvements. A new barn, better fencing, more cattle. It was not wealth in the way Theodore Whitmore would have understood it, but it was security built on solid foundation. Arabella found herself thinking less and less of her old life in Boston, of the expectations and pretensions of that world. This was her home now, this rough ranch in California. These were her people, her husband, her son, her adopted nephew, her neighbors. She belonged here in a way she had never belonged anywhere else. One evening, when William was nearly 2 years old, Arabella and Warren sat on the porch watching the sunset. William was inside, supposedly napping but probably playing quietly in his crib. Jesse was in town, courting a girl from the general store. "Do you ever regret it?" Warren asked suddenly. "Giving up the chance at an easier life?" Arabella looked at him in surprise. "How can you ask that? This is the life I was meant for." Everything before was just preparation to get me here to you. I know, Sometimes I see you working so hard, your hands roughened from labor, and I remember you are a lady from Boston. You should be wearing silk and going to parties. I tried that life. It was empty. She took his hand, threading her fingers through his. This life has meaning. I work hard because I am building something real. Every callus on my hands represents something I have accomplished, something I have contributed to our family. I would not trade that for all the silk in the world. Warren raised her hand to his lips, kissing her roughened knuckles. I do not tell you often enough how much I love you, how grateful I am that you chose me. We chose each other, Arabella corrected. That is what makes it work. In the summer of 1879, Arabella found herself pregnant again. This time, the knowledge brought excitement more than fear. She knew what to expect now, and her first pregnancy had gone well despite the difficulty. William was walking and talking, a bright, curious child who followed Warren around the ranch asking endless questions. This pregnancy was easier than the first. Arabella remained active through most of it, only slowing down in the final months. The birth, when it came in February of 1880, was also easier. After only 8 hours of labor, she delivered a healthy baby girl. A daughter, Warren said, his voice choked with emotion. We have a daughter. They named her Rose for the wild roses that grew along the creek on their property. She was smaller than William had been, more delicate with Warren's blonde hair and Arabella's green eyes. William was fascinated by his new sister, wanting to hold her constantly. Gentle, Arabella reminded him over and over. You have to be very gentle with baby Rose. I will protect her, William declared solemnly. Like Papa protects us. Arabella's eyes met Warren's over their children's heads, both of them smiling at their son's earnestness. With 2 children, the ranch felt truly like a home. There was always noise and activity, the chaos of family life. Warren built additions to the house, more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. They invested in better stock, built up the herd, became known throughout the region for their quality horses. Jesse, now 21, married his sweetheart in the spring of 1880. Warren gifted him a portion of the ranch land, helping him build his own house and start his own herd. It was hard to see him go, even though he was only a mile away, but Arabella was proud of the man he had become. The years passed in a blur of work and joy. William grew tall and strong like his father, taking to ranch work with natural aptitude. Rose was clever and spirited, unafraid of hard work but also possessing a quick mind. Arabella taught her to read and write, encouraging her curiosity about the world. In 1885, they heard news that Theodore Whitmore had died. One of his mine shafts had collapsed, killing him and 3 workers. Arabella felt no satisfaction at the news, only a distant sadness for a life wasted on greed and ego. He could have had so much more, she said to Warren that evening, if he had only valued people over possessions. Some men never learn that lesson, Warren replied. We are fortunate we did. By 1890, Warren and Arabella had been married 15 years. William was 13, Rose 10. They had become a fixture in the community, respected and valued. Warren served on the local council, helping make decisions about schools and roads. Arabella had helped establish a lending library, contributing some of her own precious books to get it started. Their ranch had grown to be one of the most successful in the area, not the largest but one of the best run. They employed several hands now, treating them fairly and paying honest wages. Several had been with them for years. Loyal and hardworking, on their 15th anniversary, Warren surprised Arabella with a trip to San Francisco proper, the city she had once dreamed of seeing. They left the children with Jesse and his wife, and spent 3 days in the bustling metropolis. Arabella was fascinated by the cable cars, the grand buildings, the shops full of goods from around the world, but she also found it overwhelming, the noise and crowds exhausting after years of ranch life. "What do you think?" Warren asked as they stood on a hill overlooking the city. "Is it everything you imagined?" "It is impressive," Arabella admitted, "but I find I prefer our quiet ranch. This is exciting to visit, but I would not want to live here." Warren smiled, pulling her close. "I had hoped you would say that. I have grown rather fond of our simple life." "Simple does not mean lesser," Arabella said. "I have learned that. Our life is rich in the ways that matter: love, family, community. Theodore's wealth could never buy those things." They returned home renewed and reconnected, grateful for what they had built together. The ranch awaited, familiar and welcoming. William and Rose ran out to greet them, full of stories about their time with Uncle Jesse and Aunt Clara. That night, lying in bed, Warren said, "Thank you for choosing me all those years ago. For seeing past the humble ranch and the poor cowboy to something worth keeping." "You were always worth keeping," Arabella replied. "You offered me something better than luxury. You offered me love and respect and partnership. You offered me a real life, not a gilded cage. That is a gift beyond price." Warren kissed her, tender and familiar, the kiss of longtime lovers who still found magic in each other. "I love you, Arabella Nichols, now and always." "Now and always," she echoed, settling into his arms. In the years that followed, their family continued to grow and thrive. William eventually took over much of the day-to-day ranch operations, showing the same steady reliability his father possessed. Rose shocked everyone by declaring her intention to become a teacher, and Warren and Arabella supported her fully, sending her to the normal school in Sacramento. Jesse's children grew up alongside William and Rose, all of them more like siblings than cousins. The two families worked together, their ranches complementing each other, building something that would last for generations. By 1895, Warren and Arabella were in their 40s, their children grown or nearly so. William, at 18, was courting a neighboring rancher's daughter. Rose, at 15, was preparing to leave for school. Jesse had 4 children of his own and was talking about expanding further north. One evening, Warren and Arabella took a walk along the creek, something they tried to do whenever they could steal time together. The wild roses were blooming, filling the air with sweet fragrance. "You remember the day we met?" Warren asked. "You riding up, exhausted and lost and so determined not to show fear." "I remember a tall cowboy who offered kindness to a stranger," Arabella replied. "Who gave me shelter and protection without asking anything in return." "I asked for something eventually," Warren teased. "You asked me to be your wife, which I did return. I gave you my heart. And I gave you mine." He stopped walking, turning to face her. 20 years, Arabella. 20 years of marriage, and I love you more today than I did then. I did not think that was possible, but it is true." Arabella reached up to touch his face, now lined with age and weather but still beloved. "I love you too. You are the best decision I ever made." They kissed there by the creek, under the setting sun, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. In 1897, William married Sarah Daniels, Martha's daughter. The wedding was held at the ranch, a joyous celebration that brought together the whole community. Arabella watched her son stand with his bride and remembered her own wedding day, the simple ceremony that had meant everything. Rose graduated from normal school in 1900 and returned to the area to teach. She took a position at the small school that served the ranching families, teaching children of all ages in a one-room schoolhouse. She was brilliant at it, patient and creative. beloved by her students. Warren and Arabella entered their 50s surrounded by family and accomplishment. Their ranch was stable and successful. Their children were launched into lives of their own. They had more than they ever dreamed possible when they started. One night, sitting on their porch as they had done countless times before, Warren said, "If you could go back and do it all again, would you change anything?" Arabella considered the question seriously. "I would spare myself some of the fear of those early days. The worry that Theodore would somehow force me back. But no, I would not change the important things. I would still flee that mansion. I would still ride until I was lost. I would still show up at your ranch asking for help. And I would still offer it," Warren said. "Even knowing all the challenges ahead, all the hard times we have faced, I would do it all again for the chance to love you." "That is the secret, is it not?" Arabella mused. "Love makes the hard times bearable and the good times transcendent. I thought I needed luxury and ease, but what I really needed was someone to share life with, someone who valued me as a person, not a possession." "You are the most valuable thing in my life," Warren said seriously. "You and our children, the family we have built together. All of this," he gestured at the ranch, "means nothing without you to share it with." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Closer, they could hear the gentle lowing of cattle, the rustle of horses in the corral. These were the sounds of home, of life fully lived. In 1903, William and Sarah had their first child, a boy they named Warren after his grandfather. Arabella held her grandson and felt the circle of life completing. She was a grandmother now, a role she embraced with joy. Rose, at 23, announced her engagement to a rancher from a neighboring county. He was a quiet, serious man who clearly adored her brilliant mind and fierce spirit. The wedding was planned for the following spring. Jesse, now in his mid-40s, had become a pillar of the community. His oldest son was preparing to take over his ranch, allowing Jesse to slow down slightly. He and Warren often sat together in the evenings, reminiscing about the old days, about all they had built together. One evening, Jesse said to Arabella, "I never thanked you properly for coming into Warren's life, for making him happy. He was so lonely before you arrived. Now look at all this." He gestured at the thriving ranch, the family gathered for Sunday dinner. "You made this possible." "We made it possible," Arabella corrected. "All of us together." That is the beauty of family, of community. We build things together that none of us could build alone. In the spring of 1904, Rose married her rancher, Henry Cooper, in a beautiful ceremony. She wore a dress that Arabella and Martha had sewn together, white lace over satin, simple but elegant. She was radiant, glowing with happiness. Watching her daughter marry for love, Arabella thought back to her own arrival in California nearly 30 years before. She had come seeking security and found so much more. She had found purpose, partnership, and a love that had sustained her through every challenge. After the wedding, Warren found Arabella standing alone for a moment, watching the celebration. "Thinking deep thoughts?" he asked, sliding an arm around her waist. "Thinking about how life takes us in unexpected directions. If someone had told that frightened girl fleeing Theodore's mansion that she would end up here, married to a cowboy, running a ranch, watching her children marry for love, I would not have believed them. Are you glad it worked out this way? Glad does not begin to cover it. I am grateful, humbled, blessed beyond measure." She leaned into him, fitting against his side as naturally as breathing. "You gave me a better life than I ever imagined, Warren Nichols." "No," he said softly. "We gave each other a better life. That is what love does. It makes us better than we could be alone." By 1910, Warren and Arabella were in their late 50s, grandparents several times over. Their hair had gone gray, their bodies showing the wear of hard work and long years. But they were healthy and active, still running their ranch with help from hired hands and family. William had fully taken over the daily operations, allowing Warren to step back somewhat. Warren spent more time with his grandchildren, teaching them to ride and rope as he had once taught William and Rose. Arabella maintained the garden and the household, but she also had more time to read, to visit with friends, to simply enjoy life. One evening in late summer, they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was peaceful, quiet except for the evening sounds of the ranch settling for night. "You know what I love most about this view?" Arabella asked. "What is that?" "It is ours. Not because we inherited it or bought it with inherited wealth, but because we built it with our own hands. Every fence post, every building, every tree was planted by us or our family. It represents years of work and love and determination." Warren nodded. "When I bought this land, it was raw. Just grass and scrub. I had a dream of what it could be, but I never imagined all of this. The house, the barns, the gardens, the family. You made it real, Arabella. Your work, your love, your partnership made my dream into something better than I ever imagined. We made it together," she insisted. "Your vision, my support. Your strength, my determination. That is what partnership means." They sat in silence for a while, then Warren said, "I have been thinking. We should take another trip to San Francisco, just the two of us. We have not done that in years." "That sounds lovely." "When were you thinking?" "This fall, perhaps. After the harvest, but before winter sets in. We could spend a week, see the sights, maybe buy you some pretty things." Arabella laughed. "After all these years, you still want to buy me pretty things. You deserve them. You have worked so hard for so long. Let me spoil you a bit." "You spoil me every day," Arabella said. "With your love, your respect, your partnership. But yes, let us take a trip. It will be fun to see the city again." They made the trip in October, leaving the ranch in William's capable hands. San Francisco had grown even larger since their last visit, more modern and bustling. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in restaurants, visited museums and shops. Warren bought Arabella a beautiful shawl, soft wool dyed deep emerald green. She protested the expense, but he insisted. "You have worn practical clothes for 30 years, he said. "Let me buy you one impractical, beautiful thing." She wore it that evening to dinner, feeling elegant and cherished. Warren looked at her with the same wonder he had shown on their wedding day, his love undiminished by time. On their last evening in the city, they walked along the waterfront, watching ships come and go in the harbor. Arabella thought about her own arrival in California, traveling by stagecoach with such different expectations. "I could have had a life here," she mused. "If Theodore had been honest, if his mansion had really been in the city, I might have ended up a wealthy society woman, attending parties and managing servants." "Would you have been happy?" "No," she answered immediately. "I know that now. That life is all surface, no substance. I would have been miserable, even with all the luxury in the world." Warren pulled her close, heedless of the people passing by. "I am glad you found me instead. Glad you chose the humble cowboy over the wealthy mine owner." "You were never humble," Arabella corrected. "You had nothing to be humble about. You had integrity, kindness, strength of character. Those things are worth infinitely more than Theodore's gold." They returned home refreshed and renewed, ready to settle into the quiet rhythms of fall and winter. The ranch awaited, familiar and welcoming, full of family and life. In 1915, they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. The whole family gathered, William and Sarah with their 4 children, Rose and Henry with their 3, Jesse and Clara with their brood. The house overflowed with people, noise, and laughter. Someone asked Warren to make a speech. He stood, uncomfortable with being the center of attention but willing to try. "I am not good with words," he began. "Never have been. But I want to say this. 40 years ago, I was a lonely cowboy with a small ranch and big dreams. Then a woman rode into my life, lost and scared but determined to forge her own path. I fell in love with her courage first, then her kindness, then everything else about her. She has been my partner in every sense of the word, working beside me, building this life with me. She made me better than I could have been alone. So here is to Arabella, the love of my life, the mother of my children, the heart of our family. I love you more today than I did 40 years ago, and that is saying something." There was not a dry eye in the room. Arabella rose and kissed him, not caring that everyone was watching. This was her husband, her partner, her love. Let everyone see what they meant to each other. The celebration lasted well into the night, multiple generations of family sharing stories and laughter. Arabella looked around at all of it, at the legacy she and Warren had built together, and felt complete satisfaction. This was what mattered. Not wealth or status, but love and family and a life well lived. As the years passed, Warren and Arabella gradually slowed down. William ran the ranch now, with his oldest son learning the trade. Warren still went out with the cattle sometimes, but more often he worked with the horses, training the young stock, passing on his knowledge to his grandchildren. Arabella's garden remained her pride and joy. She spent hours there, tending vegetables and flowers, teaching her granddaughters the secrets of making things grow. The physical work was harder now, her joints aching with age, but she refused to give it up entirely. In 1920, they celebrated their 45th anniversary quietly, just the two of them. They took a walk along the creek, moving more slowly than they once had but still enjoying the familiar beauty of their land. 45 years, Warren marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday you rode up to my barn. Other times it feels like you have always been here. I have always been here, Arabella said. In my heart, even before we met, I was searching for this place for you. I just did not know it. They sat on a fallen log by the creek, holding hands, watching the water flow past. The wild roses were blooming again, their sweet scent carrying on the breeze. "You have any regrets?" Warren asked. "Anything you wish you had done differently?" Arabella thought carefully before answering. "I regret the fear I wasted in those early days, worrying about Theodore, about money, about the future. If I could go back, I would tell my younger self to relax and trust more. But the big things, the important choices, I would not change any of them. Not even the hard times. The years we struggled to make ends meet, the children's illnesses, the droughts and disasters, especially not those," Arabella said firmly. "Hard times teach us what we are made of. They brought us closer together, made us stronger. I would not trade our struggles for an easy life that taught me nothing." Warren raised her hand to his lips, a gesture he had made countless times over the years. "You are the wisest woman I know. And you are the best man," Arabella replied. "We make a good team, Warren Nichols." "The best team," he agreed. By 1925 they were in their 70s, old by anyone's standard. Warren's hair was completely white now, his face deeply lined. Arabella moved more slowly, arthritis making her mornings difficult. But they were still together, still partners, still deeply in love. Their family had grown large and successful. William's ranch was thriving, his children nearly grown. Rose had retired from teaching but tutored children from her home. Jesse's grandchildren were starting families of their own. The legacy Warren and Arabella had built extended far beyond their own children. influencing an entire community. One afternoon, they received unexpected visitors. A young couple arrived at the ranch, the woman clearly pregnant and exhausted. They were lost, the man explained, trying to find family in Sacramento but running short of money and supplies. Arabella and Warren exchanged a look, both thinking the same thing. "Come in," Arabella said warmly. "Let us get you some food and water. You can rest here tonight." Over dinner, the young couple told their story. They had come west seeking opportunity, following promises that had not quite panned out. They were scared and uncertain about the future. "I know exactly how you feel," Arabella said. "I came west 50 years ago under similar circumstances. I thought I was heading toward one future and ended up with something completely different. Better or worse?" the young woman asked. Arabella looked at Warren, seeing him as she always did, the man who had offered her kindness when she needed it most, who had given her the chance to choose her own path. "So much better," she said. "Beyond anything I could have imagined." They put the young couple up in the spare room, gave them supplies, and pointed them toward Sacramento with directions and a letter of introduction to a friend who might have work. As they drove away the next morning, Warren said, "Do you think they will make it?" "I think they have a chance," Arabella replied. "Just like we did. Sometimes all people need is a little help, a little kindness to find their way." In the spring of 1927, Warren fell ill. It started as a simple cold but developed into pneumonia. Despite the doctor's best efforts, his condition worsened. Arabella refused to leave his side, sleeping in a chair by his bed, tending him with fierce determination. One evening, when the doctor had gone and they were alone, Warren took her hand. "Arabella," he said, his voice weak, "you have made my life worth living. Every day with you has been a gift." "Do not talk like that," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You are going to get better. You have to." "I am 77 years old, love. I have lived a full life, a blessed life. Because of you, I have known real happiness. I have no regrets." "I have one," Arabella whispered. "I wish we had more time." Warren smiled, the expression gentle despite his exhaustion. "We have had 52 years. That is more than most people get. We have built something beautiful together. This ranch, our family, our love. That does not end just because I do. I am not ready to let you go, I know. I am not ready to go either, but Arabella, listen to me. You are strong, you will be all right. Our children will take care of you. You still have so much to give to this family, to this world." She clutched his hand, feeling it trembling in hers. "I love you, Warren Nichols. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. And you to me. My beautiful, brave Arabella, thank you for choosing me all those years ago. Thank you for building this life with me." He died peacefully in his sleep that night, Arabella holding his hand. She felt the moment he left, felt the absence of his presence like a physical blow. But even through her grief, she knew what he would want her to do. Carry on, stay strong, continue building the legacy they had created together. The funeral was huge, nearly the entire county turning out to pay their respects. Warren had been a respected member of the community for over 50 years, known for his honesty, his fairness, his generosity. Person after person came to Arabella with stories of how Warren had helped them, guided them, shown them kindness when they needed it most. Through her tears, Arabella felt pride. This was Warren's true legacy, not the ranch or the wealth, but the lives he had touched, the good he had done in the world. The months after Warren's death were the hardest of Arabella's life. The house felt empty without him, the silence oppressive. She missed him with an ache that never quite faded. His laugh, his smile, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. But she was not alone. William and Sarah moved into the main house with her, their presence filling some of the emptiness. Rose visited frequently, bringing her grandchildren to brighten Arabella's days. Jessie came by almost daily, checking on her, sharing memories of Warren. Gradually, Arabella found a new rhythm to her life. She could not work like she once had, but she could still tend her garden, still teach her great-grandchildren the skills she had learned over a lifetime. She took comfort in routine, in the familiar tasks that connected her to Warren and their shared past. One afternoon, sitting in the garden she and Warren had planted together, Arabella reflected on her life. She was 73 years old, a great-grandmother multiple times over. She had lived through incredible changes: the closing of the frontier, the coming of automobiles and electricity, wars and peace. But the constant through it all had been love. Warren's love had sustained her, shaped her, made her better than she could have been alone. Even now, with him gone, that love remained. It lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch they had built together, in the community they had served. She thought back to that terrified young woman who had fled Theodore Whitmore's mansion so many years ago. That woman had thought she needed luxury and ease. She had been so wrong. What she needed was purpose and partnership and love. Warren had given her all of that and more. "I chose well," she said aloud, to the empty garden, to Warren's memory, to the life they had shared. "We chose well." A breeze rustled through the wild roses, and for a moment, Arabella could have sworn she felt Warren's presence beside her. Not sad or mournful, but content and at peace. They had built something good together. That was their triumph, their legacy. Arabella lived another 8 years, dying peacefully in her sleep in 1935 at the age of 81. She was buried beside Warren, their graves marked with simple stones that bore their names and a single inscription: "Partners in life, united in love." Their ranch passed to William, who continued to run it with the same integrity his father had shown. The family tradition of fairness and hard work continued through the generations. The community Warren and Arabella had helped build thrived and grew. But more than any material legacy, what they left behind was the example of their love. Theirs was a partnership built on mutual respect, sustained through hard work, and deepened by shared challenges. They had proven that luxury was nothing without love, that wealth meant nothing without connection, that the best life was one lived with purpose and partnership. The mail-order bride who had expected luxury had found something far better: a humble cowboy who offered her love, respect, and the chance to build a meaningful life together. In choosing him, in choosing the hard work of ranching over the ease of wealth, Arabella had found her true self and her true home. Their story became family legend, passed down through generations. Great-grandchildren who never knew them still heard the tale: how Arabella fled one future and found a better one, how Warren offered kindness to a stranger and gained a life partner, how together they built something that lasted far beyond their own lives. It was a love story for the ages, set against the wild backdrop of the Old West. Not a story of grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but of quiet daily choices, of showing up for each other, of building a life one day at a time. It was real and true and beautiful, a testament to what love could accomplish when given the chance to flourish. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Arabella and Warren were together again, still partners, still in love, still building something beautiful. Because that kind of love, forged in hardship and sustained through decades, does not end with death. It continues on, eternal and unbreakable, a light that never dims. Their legacy lived on in every corner of the ranch. In the gardens Arabella had tended, in the buildings Warren had constructed, in the values they had instilled in their children. Every grandchild who learned to ride, every great-grandchild who helped with the harvest, every family dinner held in the house they had built together was a continuation of their story. The younger generations sometimes asked what made their love so special, so enduring. The answer was simple and profound. They had seen each other clearly from the beginning. Arabella had not been blinded by Warren's lack of wealth, and Warren had not been intimidated by Arabella's refinement. They had recognized in each other something essential: goodness, strength, integrity. From that foundation, they had built everything else. Through droughts and disasters, through financial struggles and personal losses, they had remained united. Not because it was always easy, but because they had chosen each other every day in ways both large and small. On quiet evenings, when the family gathered at the ranch, someone would inevitably point to the portrait that hung in the main room. It showed Warren and Arabella in middle age, his hand on her shoulder, both of them looking directly at the camera with calm, confident expressions. It was a testament to their partnership, to the life they had built together. "Tell us the story again," the youngest children would beg, "about how great-grandma came west and found great-grandpa." And the older family members would smile and begin the tale once more. How a mail-order bride expected luxury, but found something far better in a humble cowboy's offer of love and partnership. How two people from different worlds created a shared life that became legendary. How their love story proved that the best things in life cannot be bought or inherited, only earned through dedication and shared purpose. It was a story worth telling, a legacy worth preserving. And as long as there were Nichols working the land Warren had claimed and Arabella had helped build, their love story would continue to inspire, to guide, to remind each new generation of what truly mattered in life. Not wealth or status or ease, but love. Always, inevitably, eternally. Love.